We've seen the entertainment industry change drastically over the years, from the advent of linear television to streaming, and now conversations around AI. It feels like nothing stays the same. But our industry isn't completely devoid of consistency. For as long as commercial theater has existed, the coveted national tour has been a hallmark of an actor's career, and today we'll be diving into what it's like to perform in a Broadway national tour. From multiple opening nights to long bus rides and backstage drama, we're going to get into it all. My name is Hassiem Muhammad, and you're listening to The Actor's Instrument, where we discuss the essential qualities you need to stand out in the entertainment industry. Joining me today is Elijah Ahmad Lewis, an actor, singer, arranger, model, and entrepreneur, with a music producer for a father and a mother who was an actress and an uncle who was the leader of a famous singing group. Elijah has been around music and entertainment all of his life. Elijah has performed in Motown the Musical and Ain't Too Proud, both on Broadway and on the respective shows' national tours. Elijah, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Really glad to be here.
Talk to us a little bit about, I was on your website doing some snooping. You've got an album out right now called Energy and Love.
I do. Yeah, Energy and Love. It's a 10-year baby. I know pregnancies happen 9 months, but it is a 10-year baby that yeah, I started a while ago. And just so many entities that go in. I've been in the music industry recording since 2009, worked with different people and background and writing. And I released singles and things, but I felt like it was time for me to put out a body of work for people to kind of see who I really am. Singles are cool. Singles are nice, come out, hear it. But an album is a true body of work that gives you an essence of an artist to me. Energy and Love is it's kind of a self-titled album, if you would, just not being self-titled. My artist name is EAL, and um, Energy and Love. That's who I am. That's what I give. That's what I represent. And yeah.
I also saw a clip of you performing at the Harlem Cultural Festival Foundation Legacy Tribute Dinner. That's a long name.
Yeah.
Uh, I was like, God dang. And something I know about you, Elijah, I know you love to make music. You're a dynamic performer. Like if anybody's listening to the show, you just like go on YouTube or Instagram, look up a clip of Elijah. My man's gonna be hitting the splits or hitting the knee slide, something.
Thank you.
Um, and something else I know about you is your fashion is always on point. And okay, I was like, you're fit for the Harlem Legacy dinner. I was like, a little subdued, but then I saw those pants. I was like, I can't just go get them pants at H&M. Like there's always a thing. So where does fashion fit into your artistry?
Fashion. I mean, first of all, it's our culture. Everything
Mm,
fashion originally came from us. So it's
say that.
there, it's embedded. But being a model for a few years too, and trying on people's clothes, and uh, you know, I just had a love for it. I even in high school, when I transferred high schools, my sophomore year going into my junior year, where I went to Cicely Tyson School of Performing Arts,
Mhm.
and I walked in the first day of school. We had a uniform, which was white collared top and khaki bottom. And
Mm.
I had on a white collared shirt, polo shirt with a tie, with a khaki flare bottom, with a boot, a briefcase, and a black blazer. And I
Not the
walked in there.
briefcase.
I did. I've been wearing briefcases since I was a kid. Um, and these kids were like, "Who is this dude?" Like, I just always felt like I was just a blank canvas, and
Mhm.
I could express who I am through my clothes too, and just you can change up your mood based upon your clothes. It's a way of communicating without opening your mouth to me.
Mm. I like that way of communicating without opening your mouth.
Yeah.
I that makes so much sense to me now that you say it, especially like what I know about you,
Mhm.
such a dynamic performer. It's like you say a lot, when you sing, you say a lot when you act, you say a lot by the way that you dress. I love it.
It's all forms of communication. We just have to tap into the powers that we have and use them for what we want them for.
Absolutely.
So when
Absolutely.
I walk into
N-
a room with what I'm wearing, it should precede me before I open my mouth.
And it does. It does.
Well, thank you.
Now, let's talk about let's dive into the meat and potatoes of this,
Yeah,
tour life.
yeah,
I've never been on tour. I have so many questions.
yeah. And
um
I have as many answers as I can answer.
uh, um hopefully this first one is it could be easy, it could be hard.
Mm,
You've done 2 Broadway national tours, yes?
three.
And or 3. Okay, cool. What's the third show? Motown?
I did
Ain't
two of
Too
Motown.
Proud.
I did two of
That's
Motown. I did
right.
the first national tour of Motown, and then Mr. Gordy called me and asked me back for the second.
Heard. And that's something that, for these listeners to understand, cuz I was looking at your resume. It's like 2 shows but multiple contracts over years.
Yeah,
So like you were employed through these 2 shows for years.
yeah,
Um and so I think that's also an interesting thing about touring that's maybe different from a lot of work that I've done. It's just like the length of the contract, the amount of time you're working on the thing.
yeah. And I'm gonna say this before we dive into this Broadway thing. I have made my request known to the union, to Equity, that there needs
Mhm.
to be a category for first national tours for the Tonys.
Mm.
Because as you've said, and trust me, of course, the pinnacle, the goal is to be on Broadway for everyone.
Yeah.
That's the as people say, the Olympics of theater.
Yeah. Which
But
you've done.
yes, and I feel that even with that, because my times on Broadway with these shows were lesser than the tour,
Sure.
both for both shows. And I feel like, especially the first national tour, we're the ones that carry the longevity and life of the show, even when it's closed on Broadway. So, even if a show is on
Mm.
Broadway for a year and then we go out on a national tour and we're out there for 3 years, like we're
Right.
sustaining the show, we're carrying the show, and a lot of points, our longevity of the show is longer than Broadway. And not that Broadway is not hard. 8 shows a week is a beast in itself. But when you have to do 8 shows a week and travel it to different climates, to different demographics, um,
Mhm.
different climates of the state, different
Yeah.
theaters, different backstages, different temperatures, different, backstage, all of that is more than you being at home on Broadway in the same theater, going home and coming back every day with
Yeah.
your routine of, and I'm probably diving into whatever your questions you have already,
And I love it. Go ahead.
but yeah, when you're home, you have contact to your ENT, you have contact to your doctor, you have contact to your chiropractor, to your therapist, to whoever you use for you as an artist. But on the road, you kind of have to find these things or rely on your company manager to help you find these things so that you can sustain these 8 shows a week as you travel to these different states.
Mhm.
So I feel like there needs to be a
Mm.
category in the Tonys because we are working just as hard as those
Mm.
who are on the Broadway stage. Um, yeah,
That I mean, that's as excellent of an argument as I could think about. You're absolutely correct. What are some of the strategies that you had working, just like those practical things that you mentioned that maybe we take for granted? I mean, nutrition, exercise,
yeah,
sleep, finding a doctor while
yeah.
you're on the road.
It's difficult. I had to, and I've done 3 Broadway tours thus far. And I had to kind of find and maneuver my way through it
Mhm.
and find out what worked for me. Everyone's process works different for them. And of course,
Mhm.
you ask questions, you ask your peers, gratefully with these shows, I've always kind of toured with some people in it who I've already known in life.
Mhm.
Um, so, you ask questions, but everyone's process is different and what works for them is different. It is
Mhm.
a journey. You know, if they wanted to do reality shows, they can do one on Broadway tours. But then there'll be a lot of there'll be a lot of different things that we had to, sign off and release. And
Did you have a particular routine? Like when you arrived in a new city, like what's kind of the first couple of things that you would do?
yeah, I developed one. I learned that I needed to develop one.
Mm.
So let's start just by saying that of course we do 8 shows a week, and technically we get one day off, which is Monday,
Mhm.
which turns into our travel day.
Oh, you travel on your off day? Oh, ugh. That's like cheating. That's not
Talk about
that's
it.
not an off day.
It's not an off day. It's a travel
Wow.
day, and especially if you're traveling and you travel, get up in the morning, and then you don't get to the city till like 3, 4, 5 o'clock.
The day's gone.
And when you get there, you have to figure out what food are you gonna get, first of all, for that day after traveling because 'cause you're hungry. Then figuring
Mhm.
out what food will be for the week. I'll touch back on that. Um, Acclimating yourself to the hotel. For me, checking the hotel, derating it, making sure it's really clean, doing all those protocol things for me to feel comfortable, and then to sit down and try to have a moment for yourself before Tuesday begins.
Mhm.
I don't think people really factor in those elements for us as, they do all of this. So,
No.
my schedule that I figured out for myself is to come in, do those things. Um, I realized that I started traveling with a mini burner kit that I had. It was a burner and an air fryer.
Okay.
Because when you get out of the theater, it's around 11:30. Most of these cities that we go to that are maybe not be major cities, things close early. Things close while we're on stage or are
Yep.
closing as we're getting out. So, one thing I used to do was at certain points in my show, I knew how the show ran, so I would pre-do a Uber Eats or a uh, thing, so it was arriving to my hotel as I was getting to my hotel. That's one thing I used to
Nice.
do, and then realizing that eating and the things that you have open are not really nutritious for you to eat.
Yeah.
Especially at that time of night, knowing you have maybe another show or 2 shows to do the next day. Um,
Mhm.
so then I developed my own way of meal prepping, which is how I traveled with a burner, um, you know, and my air fryer, and trying to set that up so that I had food during the week. So I would get into a city, probably try to, if we didn't have a car because we were close to the theater, try to
Mhm.
do a grocery delivery to the hotel. Most of our contracts, we made sure that we had a refrigerator in the room, even though it's a little small. I found what I needed to finagle my way through it, and
Mhm.
yeah, and then Tuesday starts. And don't be, fortunately for most of these tours, I had a either leading role or supporting leading role to where now you're in the city and you have press the next day because opening night is on Tuesday. So you're
Mhm.
getting up early in the morning to
Mhm.
be on TV or be on radio, whatever, what have you. Come back, maybe try to recoup for a minute before you get to the theater for a sound check at 5 o'clock to look at the lay of the land of the theater, look at your backstage traffic, because now the backstage is different because we're in a different theater than we were in the last city.
Right.
Figuring out, talking to my dresser, making sure things are right with that, making sure things in my dressing room are cool, the way I needed to set it up for, everything that I need throughout the show. And then once you kind of do that, the show happens. If you have a talk back, if you have a meet and greet afterwards, then you're not really getting out till like midnight. To then go
Yeah.
home try to have some kind of a life. You create this
Yeah.
family, on tour. Maybe you guys do something. Maybe you go out. Maybe y'all just hang out in a room. Maybe y'all hang out in the lobby. On Ain't Too
Mhm.
Proud, we had a lot of spades players, so we would have, spades, you
Oh,
know,
come on.
night or whatever. Oh, come on, come on, come on.
Boy, we used to woo.
And then try to
I
get
did
some sleep to do it the next day.
mm. It's funny because what you're describing is like, I've done a lot of regional theater, I've worked around the country. Um, and it's so similar except for the part, I mean, the obvious part, but it's, you know, the part where every week or 2 weeks you're moving locations.
Yeah.
So like I did a show at Alabama Shakes,
Mhm.
all black cast, and we would play spades till like 3 a.m. sometimes.
Yes.
You're just developing these relationships, and you're like you said, you're trying to have a life outside of the show. And for us, we did that, and like, but we were in one place the whole time. And so I can only imagine you trying to juggle like that social life while also like, some days you want to hang out, but then you're like, well, shoot, tomorrow we got to move again. I got to do another grocery delivery. So, yeah.
Yeah. And even with trying to have a life, and I had I'll say debate. It wasn't an argument because I don't argue. We had a debate on, you know, well, aren't you doing what you love to do?
Oh, this one.
And I'm like, yeah, but
Mm,
it's still a job. Like there's still things that come with it. Yes, I'm grateful that I'm doing what I love to do and getting paid for what I love to do, but let's not negate the back end of it. First off,
right.
and I'm going to tap on this, there are, and this can be dived into so many ways, but so many people wonder why they see sometimes downfalls of entertainers, or drug habits or drinking habits or whatever habits they may have that spiral into another world. I don't think people understand that being a performer, being an entertainer, you are giving yourself is the
Hmm.
instrument. Especially for actors and dancers, stuff like Broadway. We're pouring our heart to you every night, not for a camera because you can't record, not for
Hmm.
things to be seen on a longer term, because it's that moment. It's the actor and the audience member for that moment. You're having experience in this moment. And if you are only in this moment, is only when you can experience it. So at that given point, because
Hmm.
there is a new person every night in that seat, I have to go through myself to make sure that I pour out everything that you need to know about this story, about this time, about this character. And most times we're
Right.
not poured back into.
Say that.
So you try to find ways to pour yourself or fill yourself back up to do it again,
Hmm.
to be able to be that vulnerable again, because it is a lot of vulnerability that happens. And sometimes people find that in the wrong ways. So,
Mm.
me trying to play spades with a few of my cast members, and yeah,
Yeah.
up till 3 or 4 a.m. or whatever, and you're like, don't you have a show the next day? Yeah, but you know, there's a give and give here. Why don't just go do the show and then go to sleep? You know, gratefully, sometimes we do have the day to ourselves if we don't have a rehearsal, if we don't have a put in, if we don't have press. And
Hmm.
sometimes you're using that time to sleep. You wake up at
Yeah.
noon, you wake up at 1 p.m., but to then get ready to do the thing all over again.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, I mean it's for sure. I love what you said. Like we pour out every night and we need ways to pour back in. And I never thought about, it's easy to be critical of the ways in which people choose to pour back in.
Mhm.
But I think it's helpful to recognize that people aren't like self-destructive on purpose.
Right,
It's not you're not staying up to 3 a.m. because you're irresponsible.
right,
You're staying up to 3 a.m. because you've got to refill that well because
right.
you're emptying it every night. I love that. Um, Now speaking about this juggernaut of being on tour and the long days, as you said, one day is like just getting ready for the next day and the next day, and you don't really have a day off. And oh, by the way, you're with the same group of people. I know tours, like some people go in and out, but you're probably with the same main group of people 6 months to a year at a time.
Yeah.
Does does being with the same people, y'all on the bus, y'all on the plane together, you're performing every night, does that create any kind of tension? Because I know, I think about like growing up. I had a big family. I have 6 sisters,
Hmm.
right? Um, and I know just us all being in the house, like during the summers, like just the tension, just
Hmm.
because we're all so close.
Yeah.
Um, is that something you ever experienced on tour?
Thing about touring, I think at a certain point of the run of the tour, you find your, and I'm only going to use this word for lack of a better word, clicks.
Sure.
Not to say that everyone doesn't like each other or whatever, but you find the people that you probably, you know, frequent with the most, whether it's because of your position in the show. Sometimes
Hmm.
like the leads sometimes can, because of the camaraderie that they have to have on stage, or if you're a swing, if you're off stage and you're in the back, throughout the show, you create a certain bond. So it's kind of like almost where your placement in the show is can happen. On tour there were we had a group called the City Girls. And those would be the people who knew where the spots were after the show, who went out after the show,
Oh,
to
heard.
go to the City Girls, what's going on in the city, girl?
Mhm.
Like what's happening? So
Yeah.
there'll be a group of them that, always went out. There'll be a group of people who always played
Hmm.
spades. I think that it is what you make it. I know that
Yeah.
for me, I try to find where everyone lies just within themselves and see just how they operate with themselves.
Hmm.
Because like you said, you're literally picking up your whole life for at least a year, not being
Hmm.
home, not being with your friends, not being with your family. So this becomes your family. I always say that theater is the theater is the new what you call it, family reunion.
Yes. Speak on that.
Because there's so many friends that I have that are now family to me of shows that I've done, because I've spent more time with them than my family. So you become a
Oh.
part of their life. You know the kids. The kids are growing up, and depending on how close you are, maybe your uncle
Yeah.
Elijah. Because you've been around them so much. The kids have been on tour with you. For instance, on Motown the Musical, our little Michael Jacksons. I used to do a thing called Camp Eli, because they were, with their parents a lot. There would be some days if I had free time, I would take them away from their parents, and we would either go swimming or, go out to the mall
Hmm.
or do something so they can be away from their parents, because I was a child performer and I knew how it was to be
Sure.
with your
Yeah.
parents all the time. And knowing that the parents, even though they're there for their kids, they want to have a little time too. So there will be something that I
Hmm.
created, with our little Michael Jacksons. We go out, we do stuff, I buy them things, maybe stuff they didn't need to have. But
Hey, that's what Uncle's supposed to do.
exactly, just for them to have a moment, to have to be a kid. I know you got school while you're here working and all these things. So, they're like my little nephews now. I remember when they were
Hmm.
this high, now they're this high. And we've
Hmm.
created bonds and times and stuff like that. So, you know, theater, you create these things with people. Um, I
Hmm.
like to say that, there were some times on some shows where there was some heads butting or whatever, but just like any family, you get over it, you get through it. We got to do a show. Let's be professional
Hmm.
about it and not bring it on stage. And let's do, what we came to do.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
always say, just like I said a few minutes earlier, if they wanted to do a reality show, the ratings of a national tour would be something. But I'll leave that.
What? No, see now, because see now. What? I'm like, what's going on the reality show?
Well, people just, I don't
What's
think
that?
they really
You don't need
understand.
to say no names.
No, no, no. But I don't think people really understand what it takes to tour a Broadway show. Even like
Hmm.
flights, there were times where our flights were canceled. There was one particular time we were in Boston for Motown Musical, first national tour. And where were we before? We were in, I think, upstate New York, and we had to get to Boston. And it was
Hmm.
snowing. and our flight was canceled. Cool, flight was canceled. Now the company manager is trying to figure out, what it is, what it is, what it is. We ended up having to get a bus to drive down there. During this time,
Mm.
we skid. The bus turned around. I was
Uh-uh.
praying. I was like, Lord, if this is the way I'm going, okay.
Oh,
But
so you just mean the reality show is just all the stuff that can go
everything,
sideways when you're yeah, yeah.
everything. And bro, we got to Boston the day of. We literally put our bags in the lobby and went to the theater to get ready for the show.
Yeah. No, I remember one time I was doing The Tempest and we had a what was it like a winter holiday break or whatever because our
Mhm,
contract it was a long contract so we went across the holidays and I was my family's from South Carolina. This was like a 7-hour drive and I had
mhm,
my car so I was like I'm gonna go home. We have like a couple days. It was like 3 days or something.
yeah,
So I went home, bro. The traffic coming back, like I left myself like a 3-hour buffer,
mhm.
and I was coming back and I was like I'm getting. I had to call stage management. I was like, listen, I was like, I think I'll be on time, but I might not. And I'm somebody I hold myself to a very high standard.
Oh, yeah.
Like to be late to a call or something,
Uh,
like, you know, and also like so yeah, I feel what you're saying, like and that was once. Y'all traveling every week, every other week, so I can imagine. I want to go back to your argument for the Tony Award for the best first national tour.
mhm.
You've spoken a lot in this conversation about like the practical day to day stuff, like how to juggle it, which I love. I wonder if you could get into the artistic side of what it takes to maintain a performance for that length of time on the road.
Mhm.
Again, similar Broadway, we know it's a marathon, 8 shows a week. It's tough. What are the skills that an actor needs to possess to be successful doing a Broadway show on the road?
You have to. It is imperative because, like I said, there's a new audience member out there who hasn't seen the show. And whether my show last night was great or had hiccups or whatever, here's a new night. Um, and also not having the director there all the time, you kind of rely on the notes that were given and they come in periodically to check the show and to give notes or whatever. But you
Mm,
have to start from the beginning every night.
mm,
And when I say that, whatever journey the show is on, you have to take that journey honestly from start to finish. And based
mm,
upon the tactics you use as an actor, of course, we have methods. We have Stanislavski, we have Meisner, we have, all of these things that you can use as a technique. It's also placing yourself into the situation. And sometimes, especially with Ain't Too Proud playing David Ruffin, and as emotional of a journey of an arc that character was, there were different things that deliveries came out different every night, but they were honest.
mm,
And you hope that your co-players on stage, take that same journey too, because if you're both taking the journey from the beginning going all the way to the
mm,
end, different things may shift as they will. It's live theater, but the intention and as one of my castmates used to say, my 10 feet are on the ground. I can feel my 10 feet on the ground. As long as you're 10 feet on the ground and you're solid in where you are
mm,
and being true to the story from start to finish, you will get the truth of that story every night.
mm,
And however I deliver it is based upon my co-players,
right.
what we're feeding off of each other. There are sometimes you're tired. There's sometimes you don't want to do it, but you have to remember there is someone out there who may be inspired by this performance. There's someone out there who needs to
Right.
hear this story in this way, And even let's get to it. There may be someone out there who wants to give me a job.
Okay. Because when
So
y'all go into the Geffen in LA, okay.
so let's put our best foot forward. And for me, also knowing that it's my reputation. the thing about our career is that your last job begets your next.
Mm.
So how do you treat your last job? Because people talk, producers talk, promoters talk. And even if your producers are not there, promoters are there. Promoters are watching everything.
Is there, you're such a, I've said this probably 5 times already. You're such a dynamic performer. Is there anything you do in particular to protect your voice, your body, like doing such a long contract?
Yeah, so gratefully, thank God we have physical therapists with us, especially if it's in the contract also, but that is a big part of it. Um, I said this to someone a while ago. I said, it's interesting how your life shifts for the job.
Mm.
So there are certain things that I may do in my day-to-day life while I'm home, but being on the road, your eating changes because of the job. What you drink changes because of the job. What you snack on changes because of the job. Literally, there'll be times where I just won't talk past a certain level. People who are watching this will probably laugh by me saying that because of how I am. But I do project from my diaphragm and not from my vocal cords for all you out there
Okay.
who are watching this.
Okay.
um, and even for a show, like you know, fortunate enough if I have my own dressing room where I always get to the show in 30 minutes to an hour before half hour, personally. To be in the
Mm.
space, to acclimate myself to the space, whatever happened in the day, throughout the day, to put that off, to now center myself into the job that I'm about to do.
Mm.
Stretching, being quiet, putting on music. Normally, I have a playlist that I play before a show to get me into a certain space or whatever. Um, Warming up, steaming, going to the gym. A lot of people, just to get that adrenaline and heart rate, up and stuff. And it depends on your role and
Sure.
what you have to do. I had to be physical every night, and I had to tap into some emotional spots every night. So there would be a few different things that I would need to do to make sure that I'm good and protect myself to where it does not affect me after the show, to be able to take it off.
What is the best thing? Because you've done both. You've done shows locally here in New York on Broadway and other appearances. You've been on the road for years at a time. What's the best thing about being on tour? Why do you go back? You said you got that call to come back and do Motown a second time. Like, why do you say yes?
Why do I say yes? Number one, everyone can't get to New York to see a show.
Mm-hmm.
So to travel this show, and for certain people, I've gotten a lot of messages from people saying, oh my God, I remember when you were here, and you're the reason that I went into theater, or you never
Mm-hmm.
know what you're doing, but if
Mm-hmm.
you stay true to what you're doing something. And I like to travel. I like to see different people. I like to see different climates and different cities and experience different cultures. New York is great. New York is New York.
Yeah.
But then doing it in Oklahoma, or doing something in Detroit, or doing something in Chicago, doing something in, all these other different states, you learn different things. You see different people, you see different types. And being able
Mm-hmm.
to see the world really while doing what you love is something extraordinary, that you don't have to stay in one place and just be accustomed and
Yeah.
acquainted to one place.
Yeah. No, I love that part about being on the road as well. And my wife loves it whenever I take contracts out of town because she's like, oh, we got to check out Salt Lake City. And then, what I'm saying? Um, so I feel that. My
Yeah.
final question for you
Hmm.
about you, Elijah.
Hmm.
What is your defining quality that you bring to the table as a storyteller? What is it that sets you apart?
I have never been a person to be scared of work.
Hmm.
I've worked for a very long time. whether, starting in the entertainment at 7, but I've done a lot of work. And even if you take it out of entertainment and helping my dad with stuff and my uncle with stuff, building or moving, or I've never been shy from work. I think that is one thing today that is lacking from people, putting in the actual work. You want the outcome,
Mm,
you want the glit, you want the glamour, you want the name, you want the credit, you want the notoriety, but where's the work?
mm,
I never want to be famous or known to be famous or known. I want to be famous or known based upon the quality of my work and what I give. And what I will always do is I will work for perfection.
mm.
I will never be perfect, but if I made it in the likeness of God, just my spiritual
Okay.
thing, and He is perfection, I strive to be perfect. I know I will make mistakes. I know things will be off, but I
Mm,
work to perfection. So whatever job,
mm,
whatever contract I have, know that whatever the goal is, I will work my darnest to get there. To whatever your
mm,
vision is, to whatever you foresee for this role, for this character, for this show, I will work to get there. And I will always work in my true authenticity of myself and bringing and putting my whole self in it. Like I said before, we pour ourselves into things. There are some people who pour parts of themselves into things. And that's not to say that they're doing anything wrong with them doing that.
mm,
But I am the type of person that whatever you need, I'm going to get the job done. Just let me know what
yeah.
I need to do. Give me 5 or 10 minutes to think about it, go it over, what needs to be done, what needs to be called of me for this. And I will work until it's met,
Mm.
whether
I
that's
love that.
whatever the show needs. There are times where things that need to happen for the show that people need, that they'll call me because they know by any means I'm going to get it done for you.
Mm.
So I think that's what I bring.
And I see that in you. I really do. And I mean, like I said, there's no time where you step outside where you don't have yourself put together, where you're not presenting yourself in a certain way. And it's not, I want to be clear. I can tell it's not vanity. It's what you said. You're striving for perfection. You're making sure that you always put your best foot forward and that everyone around you recognizes that they're always going to get Elijah's best,
Hmm.
no matter what. Um, and so thank you for that. Thank you for, you know, being responsive to my requests for you to come on the show.
Of
I know now
course.
is for those listeners, we're recording this a day after the election, and
Whew.
you probably couldn't tell unless I just said that because the kind of a person Elijah is. Um, so thank you for coming on during this hectic time.
Absolutely, brother.
Um, yeah, I respect your work. I appreciate your work, and I appreciate the advice and the insight you've given into the reality TV show that is the Broadway National Tour. If you're looking for another great conversation with a multi hyphenate artist, be sure to check out my recent interview with Jarrett Austin Brown. That's it for today, folks. Thank you to all of our listeners. I'm Hassiem Muhammad, and we'll be back next Tuesday. Till next time, y'all. Peace. Thank you for listening to The Actor's Instrument. I'm Hassiem Muhammad, and you can follow me at Hassiem Muhammad and the show at Actors Instrument Podcast on all social media platforms. The Actor's Instrument is a presentation of Red Letter Entertainment. Executive producers Adam Jellicourse, Serena Esposito, and yours truly. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and check us out at theactorsinstrument.com. We'll be back next Tuesday. Till next time, y'all. Peace.